Hello, everybody. I am Dominick Cuccia. So nice to be here with all of you. And have to introduce first off my wife, Therese, my partner in crime. Could everyone give Therese a round of applause? And of course, that was my daughter, Grace, who came up and joined her for a little bit there. And with many of us who are into drum corps, rudimental drumming, it is very much a family activity. And throughout the night, many of you met my family last night, but you'll meet the rest of them as we move on. So I want to give a big thank you first off to Bill McGrath and to everyone at USARD, Gary and Joe Gelati, who've been talking to me for years about we got to get you to come perform here. So thank you to everyone at USARD for bringing me here. Thank you, Bill. And when you're doing different events, you have sponsors, and some of the sponsors who work with me and who are always supportive of me are Innovative Percussion, Yamaha, and Remo. And when you're a kid growing up in a fife and drum corps, you don't think to yourself, hey, I'm going to be sponsored by these big companies someday. But it worked out for me, and I'm very grateful to them. In 2002, I had the opportunity to be on this historic Drummers Heritage concert put together by Robin Engelman. And when we did that concert, Cooperman got right behind me. They built drums for that concert for me. And from that day forward, as I started doing more and more clinics, they've been behind everything I've ever wanted to do. Jim and Patsy Ellis and young Pat Cooperman and everyone who works there, Roger Honeywell and the late, great Sean Egan, all these people from Cooperman have been so supportive of me. And my dream someday is that every college, every university in the world, if they're teaching drum set, the students play on a drum set. If the students play in a marimba piece, they play on a marimba. Well, if they're playing Downfall of Paris, they should have a rope drum in that studio. And that's my dream, is that every college and university will have a rope drum, and hopefully it's Cooperman. So Jim and Patsy, thank you very much for everything. And a few people who are very special to Therese and I are also in the audience. My first drum instructor was Gary Gelati, and along the way he brought in Mary Saunders, and they were my first two drum instructors. And standing over next to them is Al Merritt, my wife Teresa, that was her first drum instructor. So if we could just give them a round of applause. Thank you for everything, guys. So last night we heard Jeff Queen talk about how he decided he really wanted to play drums, and Jeff Prosperi talked before. That was a great clinic, right, everybody? Give Jeff a round of applause. Well, we all have our own musical journey, how we got here and how we decided we wanted to be drummers. And for me, it's incredibly vivid. It was 1976. It was the 4th of July, big bicentennial and everything. There was a parade going past our road. And I remember it was like 100 degrees out, and people looked like they were dying of thirst, and people were passing out. You had ambulances coming up along the side of the parade, getting marchers and everything. And everyone looked miserable, and I thought to myself, I want to do that someday. And that fall, Mr. Mooney's band class, he passed out these forms to join this fife and drum corps. And I thought, wow, that's awesome. I'm going to get to go and march in the parade. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go to rehearsal on Friday night, and they're going to give me some sticks and show me a couple beats, and within a few weeks, I'll be playing the drums. So I went to my first rehearsal, and Gary handed me a stick, and he shows me this funny way of holding the stick. Says you got to hold it like this, and you put your ring finger here and your pointer finger here, but you got to keep your middle finger off and your thumb back and everything. And he says, now hold your stick straight up like this. And then he had me sort of in slow motion, bring the stick down and strike the drum. And then he said, from there, you're going to hit it a second time and bring it right back up where you started. So we did that for about 5 minutes. And then we switched over to the right hand, did the same thing. And about 15 minutes went by, and he said, great job, come back next week, show me you've been working on that. And I came back the next week, and we got a teeny-weeny bit faster. It only took me a few weeks to realize that this was going to take a lot more work than I ever dreamed. And Gary was awesome because I didn't quit. I kept coming back no matter what. And when I started, there were like 20 other kids started the same night as me. As far as I know, I'm the only one who's still drumming. So Gary, thank you for making sure I didn't quit, right? So, basically, we had to break down all of our rudiments, and that's where Gary and Mary really took me. It's breaking down rudiments. So I'm going to break down a long roll real quick, and then we'll talk about it in just a second. I have a feeling I'm going to be turning this thing on a lot here, on and off a lot here. So, breaking down a long roll. Now, the truth is, when Gary and Mary were working with me, it was a minute and a half in and a minute and a half out. And I hope nobody had a stopwatch, because I know I was far under a minute and a half each way. But it's the idea, it's the concept of breaking down the rudiments. And for those of you who are teachers, and whether you're teaching a drum corps or a public school or whatever, the whole idea of breaking down rudiments, I think, is so important. You don't have to do it the way I just did it, and you don't have to break down the rudiments the same way, but just the whole idea of getting out of the drum and breaking them down is important. I have this idea of the rudiment of the week or the rudiment of the month in a college. You know, everyone, this month we're going to break down drag paradiddle number 1. Next month we're going to break down the flam paradiddle. The next month we're going to break down the 10-stroke roll. And I think it's a way that could keep people breaking down rudiments, keeping these traditions alive, and I think it will benefit everyone. So that's my idea behind the long roll. Now, when I play it, the second thing is I didn't play it crazy fast. I played it in a way that fits my needs. Now, if Jeff is breaking down a long roll, he's going to be playing at a lot faster speeds, and he needs to break it down faster to make it work. Or Jeff Queen last night, the way he would break it down is a lot different. Some of the people I'm fans of, like Danny Raymond Jr., you know, he would have a different need. Or Rick Beckham, or Mark Riley, or Brendan Mason. They would have different needs when they break down their long rolls, you know? Some of the people I admire, I know, Brian Pentney spent years breaking down rudiments, right? And, yeah. But everyone has different needs. If you're not doing it for a competition where you have to do it to a certain speed, I mean, just the whole activity, staying busy with breaking down rudiments is extremely important. Now, the next thing, I come at this not only as just a drummer, but also from the idea of teaching. And I'm not only teaching people in fife and drum corps, I'm teaching people who might come in, just want to come and take a lesson and understand how do you really break down, how do you interpret the different roles. So I real quick want to talk about a few roles. They're kind of the misunderstood roles. And we'll start out, this is going to be tough with this microphone. We're going to start out with a 7-stroke roll. And what I like to do is, thank you. I try to clip it. Can you clip it on there? I feel like I'm going to the prom again. Of course, she went with someone else, so. Let's stay. Will this work? Is this working okay? All right, so 7-stroke roll. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, I hear corps, fife and drum corps play it, and every corps plays it slightly different. And while that is true, I think if you're working with someone who just wants to understand the basics, taking that 8th note 7-stroke roll, turning into a triplet, is the best way for people to understand. And the way I start out with the thought process is just starting out with eighth notes, and just a straight 1 and 2 and. All right, you take that basis, you turn it into a triplet. So you have 1 and 2 and triple a tap, triple a tap. And then you take it and you double up the roll. And you just take that process, you could take it and put it on the upbeat, the downbeat, whatever works for whatever you want to work on with that student. But just taking that basic idea. And I just take that eighth note triplet roll pattern, eighth note triplet roll pattern, repeat it. So that's the first roll, the 7-stroke roll. Now the next one, people come in and are always asking about, 11-stroke roll. You know, they say it's a quarter note, but how do you squeeze that roll in there? And a lot of times when you're learning rudiments, you just kind of learn them, you just play them, and you kind of feel it. But you don't really think about it. And some students come in and they want to know, they need something they can really hang on to. And you take a quintuplet. And the term I use is opportunity knocks. And especially with younger people, I use the knocks as the accent of the roll. So opportunity knocks. Everyone, say it out loud. Ready? Go. Opportunity knocks. Again, go. Opportunity knocks. Now we take that, we make our hands starting on the left, going to the right. We have opportunity knocks, 3, 4. And then you double it up with roll. 3, 4. When you put it together, 2 opportunities and 2 rolls, it's like this. 3, 4. Again, you go on YouTube, you find every fife and drum corps, they might play it slightly different, but I think of it sort of like jazz, right? 2 drummers can play the same chart, and they could probably play the same, if you wrote out every single note that a drummer played, and 2 different drummers try to play the same chart, you'll hear something different. Someone will be on top of the beat, someone might be on the back side of the beat. It's similar to that in rudimental drumming, in fife and drum corps. It's more like jazz, right? There's definitely room for interpretation. Now, the last one I want to talk about is 15-stroke roll. And how do you fit that 7? How do you fit that roll into that dotted quarter note? And working with students, I take that opportunity knocks and I just put and in front of it. And an opportunity knocks. Everyone say it. Ready? Go. And an opportunity knocks. 3, 4. And an opportunity knocks. 3, and we play it. 3, 4. And then we roll it. 3, 4. 4. And then you can create sequences with it. And I have exercises that I use with students, but that's the basic idea behind all of those interpretation ideas. So I'm going to move away from that, and I'm going to move into from interpretation to inspiration. Okay? And we all have different people who've inspired us through the years, or different things. And many of us in here write, many of us in here play, many of us just like to listen. We want to hear as many things as we can. So I've tried to find things, people, usually drummers, who've inspired me through the years. And what I'm going to do now is play a solo that I wrote a couple years back, and it's actually for Al Merritt, the man over there, lifetime member of USARD. And when we were growing up, Al Merritt, the first place we met him was as a judge. And through the years, one year he came out and he started teaching the young colonials. And like I said, it was Teresa's first drum instructor. And then, ironically enough, I knew him as a judge and a teacher before I ever really saw him play. And then I got to see him playing with the Connecticut Alumni and the Connecticut Rebels Fife and Drum Corps. And I got to see these 2 sides of Al Merritt, a traditional side playing on rope drums, and then a more contemporary side playing on a high-tension modern drums. So the solo I wrote for Al uses a looser drum and then a tighter drum, and it's titled The Judge, the Teacher, the Drummer. most of the time, the things I write are for other drummers, for people I admire and everything. But last year, when Nelson Mandela passed away, I just was touched in a way that I wanted to write something. I just sat down and started writing something. I thought about it on a tom-tom or a muffled drum or some kind of loose-sounding drum, and I came up with this little solo called Drums for Mandela. And there are two solos along the way here for non-drummers that I came across with that I'm going to play for you today. So this is Drums for Mandela. Am I on? Yeah. Okay. The other person, again, someone passed away, and I just was inspired. And when Robin Williams passed away, I just thought to myself, if Robin Williams was a drummer, I figured he would be out there on stage, and all of a sudden he'd say, "How'd you like to hear me play a drum solo?" And they'd pull the curtain open, there'd be this gigantic Neil Peart drum set. And he'd walk over next to it, he'd hold up his drumsticks, he'd take a bow, and then he'd walk next to it and have this like piece of metal or something, and he would just play on this abstract sounding thing. And so my thought, I didn't want to just play on a piece of metal, but I decided to do this solo on a hi-hat. And it's just a different sound, kind of like Robin Williams was. He wasn't like any other comedian. He definitely was an individual. So this is, for Robin Williams, it's titled Reality, What a Concept. Inspiration. Um, it wouldn't be right for me to go through a clinic without talking for a minute, just a minute about one of my dearest friends, Nick Atanasio. And, he's someone who redefined the whole idea of playing rudimental bass drum, how it should sound, how you should look playing it, and he's definitely the master. And quick, I want to bring Teresa up here to play some bass drum. I'm going to give you this is a true story. Teresa, when she was going to go audition for the Fife and Drum Corps Disney World, she had played snare drum, she played fife, but she never really spent any time on bass drum. So she went up to Nick's house to spend a weekend working on bass drum. And when she got there, he had the drum set up, and he pulled out a chain, and he chained her leg to the drum stand and said, "You're not going to leave here till you learn how to do this the right way." And the funny thing, when she got down there to Disney, the name of the group was the Sons of Liberty. And a lot of the people wearing suits who know nothing about music decided that it wouldn't look right to have a female in that uniform. So not only did she have to audition playing the instruments, but they wanted to see her go do a couple of sets. And she had to do one set on fife, and the second set she did was on bass drum. So all that work with Nick Atanasio paid off, and she got the gig, and it was one of the great experiences. So Nick is a dear friend of ours, and in honor of Nick, we're going to play Devil's Flute, and Teresa's going to be swinging the way Nick Atanasio would. Well, no one swings like Nick, but you know what I mean. Dominick and John Paul, come on up. So, talk about inspiration again. One of my dear friends, some of you know him, his name is Sammy Rami. He passed away a few years ago. He was with the Charles W. Dickerson Field Music Group. And Sammy was someone who taught me as much about being a man as he did, as much as he did about being a drummer. So, a lot of things, the person I became was very much because of Sammy. And when Sammy passed away, I wrote this solo for him. Now, I just want to give you a little background on the group he was with. It was called Charles W. Dickerson, and this group was originally a Boy Scout troop back in the 1920s. And when the Boy Scout troops had their parades, they were gigantic. And this was an African-American Boy Scout troop, and when they would go out to the parades, they were always put at the end of the parades. And it wasn't fair, but that's the way it was at that time. So one of the moms, Mrs. Body, said, "You know what? If we started a band, we'll probably get moved up in this parade." So that's what they did. They got all the kids' instruments, they started playing, and sure enough, they got moved up. And someone was so inspired that he said he would come in and teach them. His name was Gus Moeller, and everyone knows Moeller technique. And Moeller came in, and he taught fife, drum, and bugle, taught everything. And they're just an inspirational group. And Sammy meant a lot to me, and was an inspirational person to me. And so I wrote this solo, Sammy, and I got my boys Dominick and John Paul joining us. Have two more things for you. Next, like I said, this is very much a family activity for us. Teresa and I grew up in the fife and drum corps together. All my brothers and sisters, all 6 of us, all grew up in the corps together. We all married people who were in fife and drum or drum corps activity, and there's 19 grandchildren now, and other than the young ones and the 2 who fled to karate, the other 14 are all in the fife and drum corps. So it's definitely a family activity. We're going to have Grace up here now, and John Paul, come on over here. And we're going to play a medley from the corps. It's titled British Medley. It's one of the oldest medleys the corps played, and one that Teresa and I played when we were kids, and now we get to play with our kids. We have one last thing I wanted to play, and I want to invite some friends up. My teachers, Gary and Mary, and Al Merritt, Teresa's teacher, and Brendan Mason. He's what I call one of the boys. He may not have played in the Young Colonials or had anything to do with us, but he's one of my boys. And then Jeff Prospery, you're now in the Young Colonials. Why don't you come on up and play? And why don't you bring your dad? Okay? And they're now part of this family as well. And we're going to move that drum down there. And drum beat that's very famous in this Danbury area is called Finnegan's Wake. And it's played by most of the corps in this area, the Germantown Ancients, the Connecticut Rebels, the Young Colonials. Basically, in this area, if you're going to play the song Finnegan's Wake, this is the drum beat you'll use. And so to finish things off, we're going to have this group of friends, and I consider them all family, to play Finnegan's Wake.